Hi, my name is Brandon Zarzyczny, but you can call me Big Z, and today I'm talking about my favorite author, Robin Hobb, and her long series of books, mostly known as the realm of the Elderlings. And they're all split into trilogies, but they're all such good books that I had to talk about them today. So Robin Hobb is a pen name of Margaret Astrid Lindholm Ogden. And she had written as that name for many years, and they were generally, there were some children books, and there were a lot of literary fantasy and some urban fantasy. And then in '95, she started to work on, well, she published the first of the series, and that is Assassin's Apprentice. And the publishers, this is a very different kind of book for her. And she was going into a different kind of genre. And they were back then, even now too, I think publishers really think of it more as the readers are mostly male, and that they may not want to read a book by a woman. And so they changed her name to something that's slightly androgynous, as Robin. It could be male, could be female. And then they kind of did Robin Hobb, which it kind of looks like Robin Hood, so it kind of evokes that, that name in your mind when you see it. And Robin Hobb was born, and her amazing world was also born. So while Robin Hobb was born in 1995, the actual author, Margaret, was born in Berkeley, California in 1952. But she grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska, and now she lives in Tacoma, Washington. So I have read some of her short stories as her actual name as the author, but I haven't read any of her books. Probably because they're tough to get, because none of them are being published right now, and I don't think any of them are really on ebooks. So basically, the only way to get them is to get them used. And I think I got a couple of the books, but I just haven't gotten around to reading them. But her writing as Robin Hobb is just the best writing that I've ever experienced. So I found Robin Hobb's books in a relatively random way. I didn't really know about her at all until when she released her Dragon Keeper books. And it's funny because it was the first one of a series that was only meant to originally be a standalone book. But then as it kept getting longer, the publishers kept splitting it into small books. So it's her only quadrilogy in her entire series. And it's probably the weakest of the books, but that's how I found her. And it's basically just me walking around Borders and seeing this book with a dragon on it. And I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. So I picked it up and read it, and it was kind of all the way out of order, but that's the fourth series of books in this entire series in this world. So I had no idea what went beforehand, but honestly, it's a decent spot to enter the series. It's not most of the characters have never been in it before. A couple pop up from other ones, but I didn't really know who they were, so I thought they were new characters. And after I read them, I read the first book, and the rest weren't out yet. So I was like, I really like that. I want to read more from her. So instead of looking at, okay, I should go to the beginning of her books. No, instead I did the previous trilogy, her second trilogy, which is the Liveship Traders trilogy, and I love that. And then I finally went to the beginning and read the Fist and the Fool trilogies, in order. Then, I read the books as they come out ever since then, and they've what I've been waiting for. Whenever they come out, I pre-order and just wait and read them and just love them. Even though I love the books and I love the author, she wasn't my favorite author at the time. Until her newest trilogy was released with the Fool's Assassin in 2014. And when I read that, it was a continuation of her other two main trilogies featuring Fitz and the Fool. And I love that when she would talk about AMAs and different questions on the internet, people would always ask, are you going to do more stories with those characters? And she would always say, I would only do a story if I have a story to tell. If I have a story that needs to be told. Like, I wouldn't mess with their ending unless I had a reason and I had something that I had to get out. And it's so cool because she didn't announce it at all. And like, even the people that, like her family and her publishers, didn't know she was working on it at first. Like, eventually she just came to, I think it's Kat Ogden, I think like it's her daughter, but also like her helper. But it basically dropped a manuscript on their desk, and it was Fool's Assassin. That no one had know what she had been working on, but she'd working on a new book for bringing the characters back. And when I read that, I loved it so much. It's so different because, like, it's a continuation of their story, and you've watched this character grow up, and like almost like 50 years spans the books, and like seeing this is such a good story that after reading that, I was like, I have to read these books again. So this time, I actually started out where I should start out, with Fool's Assassin, and read them straight through as they were meant to be read. And reading them like that, like all one after the other in the correct order, and something magical happened when I read them. Like, it was just, her writing is so heartfelt and so engrossing that I loved every moment of it. And when I finally got back to the Fool's Assassin, I read it again, even though I just already read it like a month or two ago, and I still loved it. And this past year, like the third book in the trilogy, so we don't know if this is the end of his story or if this is just the end of this trilogy, and she'll do more with him eventually. But that one's coming out a little bit later in May, and because of that, I wanted to do it again. I wanted to reread the whole series of books straight through, and I love it so much. And I'm partway through it. Like, I'm currently reading the 10th book in the series, and they're just so good that I love this. Like, even though it takes like months of my time, and I'm not reading other new books that I want to read, it's such a rewarding experience that I'm so enjoying it so much, and I really hope more people find her books and read them. There were a lot of great authors out there, and when I try to think of what makes Robin Hobb different and what makes her my favorite author, it comes down to it that her writing is incredibly emotional. And, she writes generally in trilogies, and the trilogies are so well crafted that at the end of every one, like, I'm just bawling because of how perfect the ending is. And I've really never had quite that experience with any other book. And I also love, too, the best thing about her writing is that, yes, she has amazing characters and great character development and interesting plot lines and a great world. There's a lot of interesting world building. But the biggest thing is that she lets the characters breathe. And she lets the viewer breathe in her world. She lets the reader live that world and just enjoy the experience. Like, so many times with other fantasy authors, they craft this amazing world, and then they jump from plot point to plot point. They jump all over, and there's no time for the characters to just enjoy the world, to just live. And I mean, yeah, it makes it sometimes it's exciting, but it's weird. Like, I read this gigantic book, and then when I'm done, I think about, so was that only a week in that entire book? Like, maybe not even a week? And it's weird when you think about that. But I mean, in her books, for the first book, it's almost 10 years go by. And, in between their trilogies, a lot of times she'll jump 10 or 15 years in between the main character's trilogy. And the characters grow and they age and things change. And it's different too because it feels almost surreal, some of the stuff, because it's not like Game of Thrones where everybody's constantly dying. But at the same time, when you deal realistically with time, people die. Especially if you have a character that is old in the first trilogy, then later on they're going to be even older, unless you explain it away with magic or something. They're gonna have to die. And the way she does it is it feels very real, but doesn't feel like she hasn't earned it. And it's incredibly well done. And every time, constantly, her emotion is so well written. Especially for her Fist in the Fool trilogies, they're all first person, and you experience everything through his viewpoint, and everything is incredibly interesting. And also, she does this cool stuff where, the main character is bonded with a wolf. So I think because of that, he has more senses. He relies also on the wolf enhancing his sense of smell and sound and different things, so that when they describe things, scent plays a role, and they talk about the smell of things or different things like that, which kind of bring in the different sensations into the reader's mind, and it kind of helps them imagine it more and recreate the world in their mind. And not many people, other authors, do that, and it's very well done. Every time she does that, she's not too descriptive, but she's descriptive enough. And her prose is excellent, but at the same time, it's not too wordy. It's not distracting. The prose is easy to read, but if you actually take the time to pick out the words and the sentences, they're incredibly well written. So the world building isn't incredibly unique, but it's very well done. And like our world, there's this previous civilization that has been some sort of climatic event that destroyed everything that used to be. And but they still know something about it. They still find the ruins. And that is, in this one, it's the Elderlings and the dragons. They don't know exactly what it is, but a millennia past, there's some sort of volcanic eruption, and that changed the whole landscape of the world. And because of it, it kind of, all the dragons and the Elderlings died out. And there's still some of their cities may still be there, and some of their artifacts and different things are still in the world, but they're dead to the world. They're dead. There's no more of them left. So the main character for most of the trilogies is Fifth Chivalry Farseer, and he has two main magics. And in the world, there are two main sources of magic that people have, and there are other smaller magics like a hedge wizards, witches, and they do things with charms. And there's also you can scrying in a bowl of water, ever, and other things like that. But the main two magics are the wit or old blood, and the skill. And the skill is more of a thing for the nobility, and it's really a well-crafted magic system, because basically the people that are skilled, they can send their mind out, and they can interact with other people that have any bits of the skill. And so they can, the one Verity, the one uncle for the main character in the main trilogy, when the people are attacking this country, he can send his mind out and try to mess with the people's minds, so that they're on the ship and they think they're going into clear weather, but they're actually sailing into a storm, or they can trick them into sailing into rocks. Or another thing that allows people to communicate telepathically, through great distances. And you can also they can almost astral project, kind of. They can go out and they can witness other things. All the magic, even the wit and the skill, it's kind of almost a mental magic. It provides a lot of cool things that they can do. They can also convince the body to heal, even though that it takes the body's own reserves, but they can heal great injuries, and they can do a lot of little different cool things with it. And the wit is more of a nature magic, which has people can be one with nature, and they can kind of talk to everything. Even old trees have a life essence. I guess the idea is that all of nature, that's how they animals would stay in a flock, or they know where to go when they migrate. and they can talk to each other even though like they don't have language. Like they use the mental conversations with each other. And the wit is kind of viewed negatively in the world because like there's some other things, and like a lot of people view it almost like as the beast magic that is like a taint, and like they will kill it if they find someone that they think that, oh, you're poisoning my all my animals against me. They're poisoning their minds, and that they're like almost like werewolves, like they can transform into the animals, which they, even though they can't, like it's kind of like a prejudice against them. And so that generally Fitz, he can't really show his magic, and he is kind of like a bad thing, they think. But well, also it allows people to bond with animals. Like it's not like you can't bond with everything, but like it's almost like the animal is also stronger in the wit, and they find each other and they can bond with each other, and there's like a mingling of their minds where the person comes almost more animalistic, like the animal, and then the animal comes more human, and like it's a merging of their magics and their lives. And it's really interesting with like, you know, through that he has different bond animals. Like he has bonds with some dogs, 2 different dogs, and a wolf. And the wolf is mainly the one he's bonded for a lot of the books. And the character is his own character. I love how they make it, and it's kind of like his thoughts are wolfish, but they're the thoughts of an intelligent creature. So, and generally, like when it goes on to the other books, like featuring other characters, like it's still, even though they don't know what the skill or the wit is, like some of the characters show that they may be skilled when they even though they don't know what it is. And I like how that the world building, like the reader knows more than the characters sometimes, and it's everything they do with it is incredibly well done. So now I'm going to talk a bit about all the books, and I will try to avoid any spoilers, but I will like set up some of the storylines and what happens and try to get people to read it. But in case you don't want to spoil that all, there may be some things that you know, may not know, like if you go in blind, but I'll try to avoid anything big. So the series starts with the Farseer trilogy, with Assassin's Apprentice. And this is, Fifth Chivalry Farseer, or as he's known in the beginning of the book, Boy. And basically, he is in the north. There's the Six Kingdoms. There's another kingdom in the north, and they're kind of like Icelandic sort of thing, like, but he's a bastard son of the king in waiting, like the heir to the Six Duchies, and the grandfather drops him off at their camp, and he's like, I've raised him for 5 years. I'm not going to raise this bastard child anymore. You can feed him, and give them to them. And the big problem with that, though, is that the king in waiting, he is married to Patience, and they have not been able to conceive a child. Like Patience is barren. So then now they say that it's not Chivalry's fault. It is Patience, so that he could have a baby, but she can't. So then it's kind of, even though it happened before they were together, it's kind of a shame on their relationship. So he abdicates from the throne and gives it to his younger brother, Verity. And, it starts that, that he is given to Chivalry's right-hand man, Burrich, who's also like the stable master. And he's given him the raise, and they go back to Buckkeep, where, their home is. And he raises them, in the stable, essentially. And it starts off the series where it's really interesting because, this character, he doesn't really have a father. He never really meets his father. So he has like multiple father figures that he picks up. And it's kind of, that happens a lot in real life too. And it's really, how it's done is interesting. And, these books are all written in first person viewpoint. But the first book especially is kind of under the framework of Fitz writing it far into the future, and he's looking back on his early life, and he's writing a story of himself. So even though it's first person, like there's like comments on stuff, and like his passage of time is quicker through these parts. And then, but then once you get to him when he's older, it's less and less of the viewpoint of him writing it is apparent, and it becomes more of a straight up first person perspective. So you might have noticed from the names that they're very different, and I love that because like so many times when authors want to make like a fantasy name, they put like all these random letters like Brevich or Bellananon or like some like Lord of the Rings thing, like where the names don't really make much sense and they're kind of weird to like read in your head. And instead of doing that, like she does something that another culture may actually do. But if you look at like a lot of names that other languages use, the names mean something. You know, in their language, the names literally mean something. So that's what they do in this world, especially the nobility. And like sometimes, if they're like a craftsman, they take the name of the craft or some trait they have. Like a really tall guy, like it's almost like his nickname becomes his name. It's like his name is Tall Man. Then he has a kid who's even taller, so they call him Taller Man. And then they get the grandkid, and it's like I'm hoping my name is this, but I'm hoping one day they'll call me Tallest Man. You know, and that's the sort of thing that. But the nobility, they believe that when they're given names to their child, that some in the naming magic, where that name will become kind of who they are and their personality. So they try to give them noble traits, and they hope that they will grow into that trait. So like Fitz's dad is chivalry, and his uncle is verity, and his other douchebag uncle is regal, and you know there's a lot of names like that. Patience, all the nobility names are like actual words and traits for like, and it's a really interesting way to do it. But I love the way to do different fantasy names. So for a while he grows up in the stable, but then like it kind of the king takes an interest in him and decides that want to do something else with him that he makes more useful for the crown, and that is to train him as an assassin. And the idea is that royalty can't really go into potentially dangerous situations and try to negotiate, because then they have a royal prisoner that they could ransom or they could kill. But you could send a royal bastard, and you know if they die, it's not that big of a deal. And they could also, while they're there, do some silent work, and they can mete out the king's justice silently. So they're kind of given over to a Chade Falstar, who is also a royal bastard and the older brother of the king. So he's kind of given this like leading this double life, and you know also as he's like years are going by and he's like growing as a character, and like he also like eventually he's told to learn the magic of the nobility, like the skill, and and that's where we introduce kind of Galen, and he's the skill master. But the interesting thing is that a lot of times in the world, like they have the magic is failing during the time of the books, and that's kind of happening here. But this time there's a better excuse for why it's happening. So basically, the king, he wanted to make it more rarer, like more, so that the king thought that if fewer people had the skill and were trained in it, then the royalty that did have it would be more powerful and it'd be more useful. So he didn't really train too many new people. Then make it even worse, like the skill mistress was very old, and she hadn't taken on an apprentice yet. So when she did take on an apprentice, she died before fully training him and before fully training the two princes. So at this point, magic is a lot of it has been lost. And to make it even worse, the new skill master is is kind of a friend to the newer queen. So the original queen gave birth to the two brothers, Chivalry and Verity, and she had died, and the king had remarried this a new queen that, she says that she's more royal than the previous queen because she has like Farseer blood back in her line too. Like it used to be like a younger brother or something that went on. So she thinks that her child Regal should be the king instead of the other two older brothers. And it turns out, Regal is the main villain for the series. But things get interesting where they introduce his character, the Fool, and he is like the king's jester, but he is much more than that. And he kind of befriends Fitz, and he gives him prophecies that, even though they don't know, it's tough to unravel. Like, he is not what he appears to be, and it's the beginning of a great friendship between them. And really, the Fool's character is someone that I've never really seen any other author attempt or even come close to having such a unique character. Because, he is like a prophet, but at the same time, it's not like it's like some destiny that everyone has to happen. Like, he can see the futures, and he's trying to drive them into one that he thinks will be better. Like, he can see the potential futures, and he wants to like move the wheel closer to a better world. So he's what's called the White Prophet, and these White Prophets, they need a catalyst to kind of enact their future and someone to change the world. And the Fool's catalyst is Fitz, the main character in the books. But what's so interesting about him is that, I say it's a him because generally it's under the first person viewpoint of Fitz, and he views the Fool as a guy, as his best friend. But it's not clear like what gender he is. Because really, he's not quite even human. Like, he's a descendant of the White Prophets, and that every once in a while, there's one prophet for each generation that will try to move the world into a better path, and he uses the catalyst to do that. But I love this quote that that even a tiny pebble under a wagon wheel can change the course of the wagon, but it's usually not a pleasant experience for the pebble. And the Fool, like, he's completely almost like albino, like he's completely white. But as his character throughout the series, as he changes the world, his skin and eyes and hair get darker and darker. And like, he plays multiple different roles in the different trilogies. And he's almost like an actor. Like, you don't know, like, sometimes he plays a woman, sometimes he plays a man, and you don't know which is true. And like, you only know that he loves Fitz. And Fitz loves the Fool, but it's more as completely as a friend. But there's no limits on how the Fool loves him. And there's a lot of stuff. He's like, say that, like, he says, when people think that he's a woman, and he confronts them about it, and it's like, it's all just plumbing. What does it matter? And like, you never really know for sure, and it's so interesting. I almost view it as as like a transgender sort of role, but it may not even have a gender. Like, you don't really know what he is. But as for the story of the trilogy, it basically starts where that these almost like Viking-like characters to the north and the Out Islands, they've always raided the mainland, and actually the Farseers and their kingdom was kind of founded by one branch of them. But there's a new branch, the Liveship Raiders, and they're like attacking and killing and raping and pillaging for no purpose. And even worse, they start do this thing where they raid this town by the river called the Forge, and they send a ransom note to the Buckkeep, the kingdom, saying that give us so much gold or we'll send you back your people. And everyone's confused about why the ransom is that if you pay you, if you don't pay us, we'll send you back your people. But then it turns out that they're doing something to the people which they're taking away their humanity. Like almost they're like ripping their souls out of them. And they call it forging then, because that's like where Forge was, where the first time it happened. And they're going around like doing all these villages and forging the people. And there are these people that are barely human, roaming around like causing problems for everyone. And the main quest for the first book is that Fitz has to go, and there's a marriage. They're proposing a marriage between the northern civilization with them, and he has to go and do some assassiny things. And then, of course, nothing turns out as it is. But that's like the plot. They want to try to build them together so that they can build more ships with the wood from the north, and to try to fight the Red Ship Raiders. In the second and third books of the trilogy, Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest, it's kind of continuing his story and his growth, and he kind of comes into his own, like he's an adult kind of. And even though there's stuff going on, like he has a relationship with a girl who grew up in the village. Like he would go down to the village and he would just hang out with the other kids, and no one knew that he was the royal bastard. But that was kind of like he was just a new boy, and like his relationship growing with Molly there, and his uncle Verity goes on a quest to try to find the Elderlings and get their help. Like back in in the past, King Wisdom had went to get help against something similar where the Islanders were raiding constantly and needed help from their Elderlings and the dragons. So he goes on a quest to way up in the north to try to find them and bring them back and to help them find victory. And of course, with him gone, the younger brother Regal causes a lot of problems for Fitz and everyone else involved. Like these books are so good, but I will say that the people that don't like the books, generally their problems with it is that Robin Hobb puts her characters through a lot. And I mean that, that they, even though they have great endings, the characters they go through some hard times, especially Fitz. He has a lot of bad stuff happen to him, and he has to overcome, and he has to keep going. But it's tough. She does not pull any punches with him. And I know some people that he makes stupid mistakes. Even though and it's weird, with the first person viewpoint, it's almost like it's happening to you, kinda. You feel for him so much. And I can understand why it bothers some people. For me, the ending is so perfect that it's okay. What happens to him is it gets you to that ending, and that gets him to that who he is. Even though it's tough to read sometimes. And while the Red Ship Traders are kind of like a nameless enemy, that they're kind of like the bad people. Even later on in the books, you see more about them. And in the main trilogy, Regal is the main villain, and he is not just some evil guy that only does evil. They explain his character and why he is the way he is. There's a rationale to why he's a douchebag. I know that's why in real life, even so many evil people, they if you see interviews with criminals, they all have some justification for why they did what they did. But so many times in fantasy novels, the people are just evil. But for Regal, he has the reasons for what he does, and it's very well done. He's a believable character, and all the stuff that happens with them and once Fitz goes on the journey too to try to help Verity to bring the Elderlings back, it's so well written that it's an incredibly good books. I loved reading. So Robin Hobb's second trilogy is the Liveship Traders, and it begins with the Ship of Magic in 1998. And it was so easy to just continue Fitz's story. And for a reader, if you're reading all the books in a row, it's tempting to go right on to his next trilogy. But you miss out on some excellent books in this one. And it's interesting because, instead of doing another first-person viewpoint, the only first-person viewpoint is Fitz. So in this one, there's a bunch of third-person viewpoints. And, it's much more like other fantasy novels, like Game of Thrones, like Game of Thrones and Wheel of Time, and other books like that. They have like multiple third-person viewpoints, and that's what this series is. And it's like a very different like writing style. That is, it's impressive that she can do both, and they're both so well done, but at the same time different. And this takes place generally like south of where the original trilogy takes place. And what's funny is that in the original trilogy, they would mention Bingtown and say like it's a place where a man could find anything he could dream of. And when you actually go to like Bingtown, they're living there. It's not that interesting. Like, they have some cool stuff, but they're not that crazy. And they view the people in the north, the Six Duchies, as like barbarians. And it's kind of funny like how they view each other. And for the most part, it's almost all new characters in this book. Like, there's one that may pop up, but generally they're all new characters, and they're all so well done. Like, this book has a multitude of female characters, and every single one of them are different, unique characters that I've never seen any other author recreate something like that, with so many female characters, and all of them are people, and are interesting, are different. And some of them you may not even like for a lot of the books. And that's impressive that they can do that. These books take place around Bingtown, and it's kind of like on the edge of the cursed shores. And there's also the rain wilds that are a little further up. And, these are kind of like where the Elderlings lived, but after the catastrophe that ended their civilization. Like, every viewed their area as cursed, but these people were able to live there and to create something new there. They introduced something really cool where it's called the live ships, and that the ships were built with from these logs that they found in the Elderling city. And there's a lot of stuff that it's kind of spoilers to talk about. But they call these logs withered wood. And that, they found like the rivers through the rain wilds are really acidic. And they found like any other boat would eat away the wood and would destroy the boat like really quickly. But they found that if they made this withered wood into planks, and it's lighter than wood, but like as hard as iron. They found that if they made boats out of these, that it could survive the acidic waters with no problem. However, when they found out after 3 generations of captains lived on the ship, they created and when they made the ships, they made figureheads. And after 3 generations, all of a sudden the figurehead came to life and was talking to everyone. And they're like realized that they had something special here. So at the beginning of the book, you're introduced to this pirate named Kenneth, and he is going on this other's island to try to find his prophecy of his reign, like what he's going to do. And like this, Kenneth is such an interesting character because he is kind of the main villain for a lot of the books. But all the people around him love him, but you're kind of in his head, and he's thinking these horrible things. Like all the time, he views everything that everyone does. He thinks is they're against him. They're going to try to kill him. They're going to try to get rid of him. Like he's constantly thinking that something bad is going to happen, but in the same time, they love him, and he can't comprehend that they would love him. And it's such an interesting character that I try to think of any other character like that, and I really can't. And the other viewpoint characters, most of them are from the same family, and that's the Vestrit trading family. And they're mostly women. Like at the beginning of the book, They have a live ship, and it has had 2 generations of captains. And after the third generation, it comes to life, and they have the third generation. That captain is the main character. I say the main character is Alcia Vestrit, and she's the younger daughter, and her dad is sick, but they're on a voyage, and the captain is her sister's husband, and he is not a trader. He is half Chalcedian, and Chalced is kind of like the evil country. Like, it's kind of like all the bad people come from there, and they're like slavers, and they're really nasty people. So like he doesn't understand what a live ship really is and what it means to have a live ship. And he viewed like as a half Chalced and the general Chalced, they view women as secondary people. They're like not they're secondary to men. They're not like almost as they shouldn't have any rights or anything. But the big town traders generally, a lot of them, when they came there, the women were just as powerful as the men. They had to like run the family, run everything. So like as a woman, you could do anything in big town. But it's kind of, as time has gone by, like the men have try to revert more force on the women and say that they're more in charge now. With their family, they had lost all their older brothers. 3 of them, I think, had died from a plague, and so they only have 2 daughters left. And the older daughter is married to the half Chalcedian, and they have 3 kids. And the mother of Alcia, she has convinced the husband while he's dying of something seems like lung cancer, even though they don't say exactly what it is. They convinced him to give the ship to the older daughter instead of the younger daughter, Alcia, who has been with him on all of his journeys and he was kind of treating like she was his heir, and he wanted her to kind of inherit the ship and captain it. So after they arrive back in Big Town in time for her father to come on aboard the ship and die on his planks, and have the ship bring in the memories of the captain, like and quicken, like, and then it should be the glorious time when the live ship awakens, but it's kind of darkened because of the conflict between the family. So once the live ship is quickened and the father is dead, and the son-in-law now is in charge of the ship, he wants to take control and get as much money as quick as possible. And he decides the best way to do that is to turn the live ship into a slave ship. And pretty much it's this kind of despicable thing. Like, but slavery is illegal in Big Town, but at the same time it's kind of in between Chalced and Jamalia City, and they're becoming more open to slavery. So then more people are coming in that want to use slaves, and are kind of wrecking their economy. And so he thinks they'll make a really quick buck by doing that and get rid of all their debts by being a slave ship. Even though that when a live ship, especially if it's just quickened, it's like a child. And all that misery on board the ship is not a good thing, let's just say. And that's the beginning of the when everything goes wrong. And basically you have Alcia and also the first mate of her father, Brashen. They go and they kind of go off and they try to do other things. Like, she's trying to prove that she can be a captain to the ship. And while it's going on, like, she leaves the ship. But the other captain, the son-in-law, he takes his oldest son, who his wife had given to be a monk. But you need on a live ship, you need to have one person of the blood on the ship, or the ship freaks out. So it takes him away from him, and his character is really interesting. Wintro is his name, and he's really the only other male viewpoint character, and he's kind of like he hates his dad. And that thing, the dad is kind of the main villain of the story, especially for the first book. Your dad is Kyle Haven, and he believes that his son should be more manly and shouldn't be a monk and shouldn't be contemplative and everything. And he wants him to kind of be the first mate so that he can be the captain and he won't have to be there on the ship the whole time. So the main plot line of the story kicks off where Kenneth, the captain, he wants to become king of the pirates. And to do that, he wants to steal a live ship. And it so happens to be that there's a live ship that is becoming a slaver and is not going to enjoy the experience. So things happen when Kenneth kind of captures the live ship, and then Althea and everyone else, they try to steal it back, and you have a story for a whole series of books. I love it that there's so many different characters. Like, you have Malta. You have Malta, who is the younger niece of Althea, and she is kind of like a bit of a brat. And I know a lot of people, especially me at first, like, you really don't like her. Like, she's kind of like a horrible character. Like, she's a teenager, but she's like coming into her womanly wiles. Like, she's trying to like use her femininity to kind of like get what she wants. And she's like a bitch, but like, you see that when you get more time with her, you see, what she's actually thinking, she's like such a unique character. And I love every single character that you get. Like, you get the mother of Althea, and you get her viewpoint, and you get the Althea's sister, and you get Althea, and you get so many other characters that are so interesting, and they're all unique. Also, a big part of the series that an underlying current are these sea serpents. And like, you get the, like, in between chapters, you get the viewpoint of these sea serpents, and that they don't know what exactly they are, but they're trying to find a way back through the Rainwild River to cocoon and turn into something else. And like, there's a lot of interesting things with that, where like, you learn more about what's happening. And there's also something with the Wizardwood logs, where maybe they're not logs, maybe they're cocoons. And there's a lot of like cool stuff with that. And like, things happen that change the world that they live in and make it different for Fitz and the Fool when they get back to the trilogy after that. Now, I will say again that, like the other Fitz and Fool trilogies, she doesn't pull any punches with her characters. Although this time, since there are multiple viewpoints, she can spread out the trauma to multiple characters. But they do go through a lot. But in the end, like, it's probably the best ending of all her trilogies is in this one, and that's in the Ship of Destiny. And it's so, like, horrible things happen, but they create such a perfect ending that I just absolutely loved, and couldn't help but crying uncontrollably while reading it, because it's so well crafted. Now, I won't talk too much about a lot of what happens to avoid spoilers, but it's such a good ending that, and then it moves on. You go back to Fitz and the Fool in the Tawny Man trilogy. And that is, the Fool coming back into Fitz's life. And this is like 15 years have passed by since the end of the first trilogy. And for most of that time, Fitz has been living kind of as a hermit. Like, he couldn't go back to another life, so he kind of lived there. And things happened where he didn't feel the need to reconnect with people. And when the Fool comes back, and he kind of drags him back into the court intrigue and brings him back into his life, and to try to be a catalyst again and change the world even more. So in this one, he's like 30 years old around that. So he is an adult, and this time he has to kind of help the next generation and help them along. And there's so many interesting things with what they do with that, like with the next generation, and how like some of the stuff mirrors what happened in the previous trilogy, but it's different. And the big thing is that this time they're trying to, like, after the first part, the old blood or the other witted people, they're probably like they're like bringing up, and they're trying to bring change in the world, and they're trying to not be behind the scenes anymore. They don't want to be persecuted, and things happen with that. And then more things happen with, like, they decide they want to try to, like, form a treaty, kind of like bring together the Out Islanders and them, and with a marriage between like the royalty, and there's a lot of shenanigans with that, and you find that maybe not everyone was killed in the first series, so some bad people there and you learn more about what was going on in the Out Islands from the Redship Raiders, like what they actually were doing and why they were doing it. And it's tough to talk too much about this trilogy without spoiling bits of the first trilogy, so I won't talk too much about it. But I love this trilogy even more probably than the first trilogy. But there still is so much character growth, even though he's an adult now, and there's a lot of character growth. Like he kind of becomes a mentor to the different people in the next generation, and it's really well written. And it gives, like the first trilogy, the ending wasn't as good as some of her other endings, and this one, it gives Fist and the Fool an excellent ending. It's such a good ending that the author didn't really want to go back to it for a long time. Like this book, the third book of the series, Fool's Fate, was published in 2003, and she didn't continue his story until 2014, 11 years later. In between that time, she worked in another trilogy in a completely different world, and it's a Soldier Son trilogy. And honestly, a lot of people don't like this trilogy that much, but I enjoyed it a lot. It's basically it's a whole new world, but it's like we're in this world that it's a different magic, but it's the idea that they say for the nobility that the first son is the heir, the second son is the soldier son, and the third son you're supposed to give to the priesthood. And the main character is the second son, and a lot of it is like kind of like a school, like he goes off to become a soldier, and like they're like a military school. Then things go weird with the plague and with magic, and the magic is almost like Native American sort of thing, it's like dream magic and weird stuff going on, and a lot of like crazy stuff happens because in the next books, like he's like cursed, and he just gets fatter and fatter, like as the magic is like in like some of that, like the strength is growing to change the world, but like the power is like it envelops him and it changes who he is. And a lot of people don't like it, but it's a really interesting series of books. And also, again, like her other trilogy, that has an amazing end. And I would recommend, but like you could probably skip it, maybe come back after you finish the rest of her books in their main world. But in 2009, she came back to the realm of the Elderlings, with the Rain Wild Chronicles. And this book is one of her weaker series because it's not really like it wasn't meant to be a series, really. It's really a one adventure chopped up into 4 books. And originally she was going to do as a standalone book, but it kept growing. So then she decided it was going to be 2 books, and then the publisher split it into 4 little books. And to talk about this series, I kind of have to spoil some of the world building from the previous books. Like, I won't spoil about the main story of any of the books, but if you want to go in not knowing about stuff, you may want to stop the video now. But in this one, just so you don't know, there's a spoiler that's some plot lines for the other books. So basically in the other books, what the Fool wanted to do, the big way he wanted to change the world, was to bring dragons and elderlings back into the world. And the big thing is that those elderling logs that they're making the live ships out of, they weren't logs, they were cocoons for dragons. I love how she crafted the dragons. Like, it's a very interesting idea for how they work. Like, the idea is that the dragons, when they mate in flight, and then they go to this kind of magical island, the Other's Island, and they lay eggs. And then when the eggs hatch, they're sea serpents. And they go into the water, and they go and they feed and they get bigger and bigger. And then eventually they migrate up north to where this clay, which is filled with like silvery magic, and they eat the clay and they spew out cocoon material, and that holds all their memories, so that once they awaken in the summer sun and they eat the cocoon, and they gain all the memories, not only of their life as a serpent, but also all their previous lives as dragons. Like, they maintain all of their, like, hereditary memory. And it's really interesting how they do that. What's so cool is that they don't like breathe fire, but it's like they have like a toxins, like they poisonous, like they're venomous, and like their venom that they spray when they're dragon is like dragon breath, and they spray it out, and they can like an acidic breath, which like kind of destroys everything. But it's also like how they make memories, like it's in their acid kind of. So, and that's what quickens the live ships, like when their memories, like their dragon memories, like the magic of it, like but it absorbs the human memories and it becomes like the figurehead of the live ship. And also it's really interesting because like when they have like a magic that they have, it's kind of like a combination of the wit and the skill. And when they interact with humans, like they can almost like put them under a spell, and they can have them work with them, and like they do things for them. But they also, when they interact with them, they change humans into elderlings. You know, through generations of living with the dragons, they gain a very long life. As by the result, if they have children are more rare. But because they were serpents for much too long, when they couldn't go up the Rainwild River because the path of it changed, so they were serpents for like millennia. And they're damaged. Like a lot of them, they completely forgot who they were. But you know, when they actually finally made it to the grounds and they were able to make their cocoons, when they hatched, they came out deformed. Like they weren't properly dragon. Their wings, they couldn't fly. Some of them had like messed up legs. Some of them didn't have any of their memories or intelligence anymore, really. This book is that all the dozens of young dragons, which are really not much more than gigantic cows that constantly eat and put them out of their house and home. So the Rainwild Traders, they want to try to get rid of the dragons, but they can't kill them because Tintaglia, the other adult dragon that's correctly formed, would not be kind about that. They decide to send them on a mission. And basically when the people that live with dragons, like even though they're living in the Rainwild, even though the dragons aren't changing them, they're still around that magic. So a lot of them, they have mutations, like they have like scales and they have like skin tags and weird things happen to them, and they generally have a shorter life. But there's some people that, like a lot of times a baby is born with too much of that dragon in them, and they have to kill the baby or get rid of it because it will have a short life anyway. But there happens to be a lot of times where the parents don't kill the baby. And so you have all these young people that are probably too much dragon, and they wouldn't live long. Like the main character, that say the girl, like she has like claws and different things, you know, that are not really that human. So they send them as dragon keepers to try to go with the dragon and go up north and either find a new place to settle or maybe find the ancient Elderling city and live there. And if they do find the Elderling city, hey, it's great. They can go there and they can dig up all the other cool things there. If they don't find it, then maybe they find a new area that they can live and they don't have to worry about them. Or if they all die on the way, hey, it's not our fault. They're out of the way now, though. See where this kind of like, it's definitely a coming of age story with all these different characters, all these young elderlings, really, either being changed by the dragons, and as the dragons are trying to grow into real dragons. And it's a lot of cool things with that, but at the same time, it's a little samey. Like it's like one adventure, you know. It's not as much of a overarching story as the other books. One thing that's really interesting, though, that they have there are multiple gay characters in the books and some viewpoint characters. And one thing is that, you know, so many times when they actually have a gay character, usually they're not villains. But also there's like one of the characters is really a bad guy, is a villain. And there's a lot of interesting stuff with that you don't see done too often elsewhere. In 2014, Robin Hobb has started publishing her final trilogy. We don't know if it's the final trilogy, but it's a continuation of the Fist and the Fool series. And it's such a good book. But I love that, you worry that there's such a perfect ending in the earlier trilogy that, would you ruin the ending by having more books with the characters? But I love that for a lot of the first book, is you get to live in that happy ending. And I really love that aspect of the books. However, eventually, that they have to bring him back into the court intrigue, and a lot of shit has to go down, and things have to happen. And when they do that, a lot of it is something stupid. Again, the Fitz is still being goofy and making mistakes, but it's still so well written. I love every moment of it. They really let you live in this story that I just enjoy so much. And I'm really looking forward to the third book of the trilogy, and I hope there's another excellent ending So I was talking so long about Robin Hobb and her books that my phone actually ran out of memory, so I'm now having to re-record the end of the video. Thankfully, it only cut off the last 2 minutes or so, or it would have been a fun time for me just talking to nothing. But to end it off, Robin Hobb is such a good author, and her stories just hold up so well. I don't reread books too often, but, I've read all of her books, almost 3 times now, and even the third time around, they still elicit such emotion in me when I read them. There's so many quotes in it that are so memorable, if you think about going to bring a tear to my eye, they're so powerful and they're so well written, and I really hope more people find her works. I really think that everyone would love her books. If you're a fan of fantasy, or if even you're a newcomer to fantasy, I think she has a lot to offer, because there's nothing too crazy in her books. It's a very human story, even though there are epic fantasy parts in their books. So I definitely recommend her books, and I think that I recommend starting with the Assassin's Apprentice. But if you don't like first-person viewpoints, then you can start with the Liveship Traders series. Then, that Ship of Magic is the first one of that. And those books are excellent, and maybe if you like them, maybe you give her other books a shot with Fist and Fool. And they're my favorite series. And, rereading them, the last time and this time, it's 2 of my most memorable reading experiences I've ever had. It's just been so rewarding experiencing the world again, and I really would recommend them. So thanks for watching, and you can check out my other video playlist around my head. Thanks.